The day I took the service elevator by Grace Miller, they called me Janitor like it was an insult. That was their first mistake. Their second, assuming I didn't own the building. My name is Grace Miller. I'm 48 years old, recently inherited a chain of high-end properties after the sudden passing of my uncle, an old man who had no children, but one very observant niece. The papers called him a real estate mogul. To me, he was just Uncle Frank, the only person who ever looked me in the eye when I spoke. 3 weeks after the will was read, I stood at the back entrance of a Manhattan luxury complex in dark blue coveralls, pushing a mop bucket. No one knew who I was. I liked it that way. It's amazing how much truth people let slip when they think you're invisible. The building was sleek, expensive, and soulless. Polished marble floors, concierge with rehearsed smiles, scent diffusers in every hallway. But underneath, the rot was cultural, not structural. I didn't walk in with lawyers. I didn't announce my presence with emails or titles. I came in through the same service entrance they told me to use, mop in hand, just like any other cleaning staff. Because I wanted to know, who really lives here? The answer came quicker than I expected. The security guard didn't even look up from his desk when I walked in. He just pointed to the back elevators and muttered, "Staff uses freight only." I nodded. I smiled. I pressed the sticky button for basement 2 and began my descent. Into their world, not mine. There's something freeing about being underestimated. You're allowed to listen, to linger, to learn. In the silence between floor 2 and floor 19, I began to hear things. Not in words, but in tone. The impatient sighs. The bags tossed to the floor with no acknowledgement. The way no one asked my name, just, "Hey, cleaning lady," or "You missed a spot." They didn't know I had their leases in my laptop. They didn't know the building's future ran through my signature. But I knew everything I needed to. I wasn't there to punish anyone, at least, not yet. Day 2 started with bleach under my nails and a security guard who acted like I didn't exist, except when I broke protocol. I stepped into the main lobby elevator that morning, just out of habit. The kind of elevator with gold-trimmed mirrors and soft jazz humming in the background. Before the doors could close, a sharp voice sliced through the air. "You're not allowed in there." I looked up. The security guard stood there with arms crossed, like I'd broken into a vault. His name tag read Jason, his tone read contempt. "Staff uses the freight lift. Residents only in this one." I gave him a gentle nod and stepped out without a word. What was I going to say? "Actually, I own the building, number?" "Not yet." The freight elevator groaned as I rode it alone to the 19th floor. The air smelled like metal, old soap, and disregard. I told myself it didn't matter. But when the doors opened, I was greeted by a pair of stilettos and a bag of trash. "Oh, perfect. Can you take this?" She didn't wait for my answer. Just dropped the dripping garbage at my feet and walked away like she'd handed me her shopping bag. I didn't move. She turned around. "What? You don't get paid to stand there?" I almost laughed. If only she knew what my time was actually worth. I picked up the bag, not for her, for the hallway. By noon, I was mopping the gym floor when a group of residents walked in mid-session, Lululemon, AirPods, entitled Energy. One of them stepped directly onto the still wet floor, then glanced at me like I was the inconvenience. "We need this cleaned now. Can you do this part first?" I looked down at the spot she pointed to, already done. "I'm on my lunch break," I said softly. "Lunch?" she scoffed. "You're a cleaner. You eat when we're done." No one asked my name. No one said please. I had officially become a utility, like the vending machine, except it got more respect. Back in the storage room, I sat on an overturned bucket, chewing my sandwich in silence. No phone, no book, just fluorescent lights and the hum of other people's noise through the vents. That's when I wrote the first name down, not to punish, to remember. Because as it turns out, there's something powerful about being disrespected quietly. You remember everything. On day 5, I learned what condescension smelled like. burnt caramel, and almond milk. I was wiping down the tile near the mailroom when he walked in. Rolex, phone in hand, Bluetooth in ear, and the kind of swagger that suggested he never had to carry his own groceries. He didn't look at me. No one ever does when they assume you're beneath them. He walked past, turned sharply, then doubled back with a smile that never reached his eyes. "You missed a spot," he said, pointing to a dry corner I'd already cleaned. "I'll get to it in a moment," I replied, still focused on the scuff mark under my rag. That's when it happened. His coffee cup, half full, extra hot, slipped from his hand. At least that's what he claimed. But the way he didn't even flinch, the way he kept his voice steady on the phone as liquid pooled near my knees, it didn't feel like an accident. "Whoops," he said, still on the call. "Better clean that up quick before someone sues." Then he looked at me, finally, and offered a wink. A wink. Not a sorry, not a "you okay?" Just that smug little flick of the eyelid that said, "You exist to serve me, don't forget it." I crouched down, rag in hand, heart cold. As I mopped up the spill, I watched his shoes. Leather, hand-stitched, not a drop on them. He stepped around me and kept walking, voice rising again as he talked about closing the deal and hitting the golf course by 3. He never broke stride, but I did. I paused, wrung out the rag, and stared at the perfect arc of coffee staining the marble, still faintly steaming. That moment wasn't about the coffee. It was about hierarchy, theater, power play, and he thought he'd won. What he didn't know, I'd already flagged his lease for review. I'd already noted 3 prior complaints from staff about his behavior, buried under VIP discretion. Now it was going on my list. A personal list. I didn't want revenge. I wanted accuracy. And my memory was surgical. That day, I didn't cry. I didn't flinch. I just cleaned up his mess and said softly to myself, "One floor at a time." The first time I saw the video, I was scrubbing baseboards outside the yoga studio on the 3rd floor. It was a Tuesday afternoon, and I remember the hallway smelling like lemongrass and lavender. My knees ached, my gloves were damp, and my back was to the camera. I didn't know I was being filmed. The girl recording it, young, early 20s, lip gloss and smugness, stood just out of frame, whispering and giggling with someone else. I heard them, but I didn't turn around. I'd learned that silence was its own kind of armor. The next morning, the concierge whispered to another staffer as I passed by, "Did you see the video? Went viral overnight. Over 200,000 views. That caption, though." My stomach knotted, not because I cared about numbers, but because I knew. Later that night, in the break room, I found it. Someone left it open on the communal computer. The title hit me like a slap. "This is how peasants survive in Manhattan." The video was 10 seconds long. No context, just me, on my knees, scrubbing the floor. They'd added a soundtrack, some remix of a pop song with the words, "Clean it up, peasant girl," looping in the background like a chant. The comments, worse. I'd trip over her on purpose. "Why is she scrubbing like it's 1850? Get a Roomba. Bet she makes $8 an hour LMAO. Meanwhile, the rent in that building is $7,000. Irony much." I didn't touch the mouse. I didn't scroll. I just stared, face blank, breath steady, until the screen dimmed. That was the moment. Not the elevator, not the trash bag, not even the coffee. This. The moment I saw my labor turned into a joke, my dignity boiled down to a punchline, my body used for views. That was when I decided I wouldn't just clean the building. I would clean house. Still, I didn't say a word. Not to the staff, not to the residents, not even to the woman who posted it. Though I saw her twice that week, laughing in the hallway like nothing had happened. I simply opened my laptop that night and saved a copy. Metadata, username, upload time, IP trace from building Wi-Fi. It's funny, they used my body to go viral. But they didn't realize the face they blurred was the one who owned the server. It came folded, without an envelope, slipped under the supply closet door like contraband. A single sheet of paper with a polite font and a sharp edge. Formal notice of uniform violation and conduct review. This is your second infraction. Continued non-compliance may result in termination of contract. I stared at the letter, then down at my uniform. Dark navy, collared, name patch, ID badge clipped, clean, pressed, standard issue. What they really meant. I wasn't obedient enough, not silent enough, not submissive enough. That afternoon, the building manager called me into his office. Sleek desk, glass partitions, a view that looked down on half of Manhattan. How fitting. He didn't offer me a seat. "Grace, we appreciate your efforts," he began, voice dipped in manufactured concern. "But there have been notes about your demeanor." I waited. He folded his hands. "Staff are expected to serve quietly and without attitude. Some residents have mentioned delays, resistance to requests. And apparently," he pulled out a tablet and tapped. "You've been cleaning the third-floor hallway during non-approved hours." "Because it's filthy by noon," I said calmly. He paused, lips tight. "That's not your decision to make." Then came the kicker. "Look, you're a temp hire. This isn't a career path. We need people who understand that." There it was, the disqualification. Not based on performance, not on professionalism, just on who they assumed I was. I nodded slowly. "Anything else I should fix?" He smiled. "Just know your place, and you'll be fine." I walked out, paper still folded in my hand. In the hallway, 2 staffers passed by without a glance. One looked nervous, the other avoided eye contact. Word spreads fast in places like this. I didn't cry, didn't rage. Instead, I opened my laptop that night and wrote one line. "Manager flagged for power-based misconduct. Full review to be scheduled post-reveal." Because when they handed me that warning letter, what they really handed me was justification. I wasn't just documenting behavior anymore. I was building a case. They thought they were cleaning house, but I was just making sure the foundation was ready for inspection. The email said mandatory resident assembly. The agenda was simple: complaints, proposed repairs, and community behavior standards. I wasn't required to be there. Technically, I wasn't supposed to be anywhere but the janitor's corridor. But I showed up anyway, in uniform, with clipboard in hand, because I had something to say. The room smelled like pastries and politics. Residents sat in neat rows on designer chairs, sipping overpriced sparkling water. At the front, a man with 2 white teeth and a mic headset stood like he was giving a TED Talk. He welcomed everyone, thanked the donors, laughed too hard at his own jokes. Then he opened the floor. One woman raised a concern about noise levels in the evenings. Another complained that the rooftop garden didn't feel exclusive enough anymore. I waited, quiet, still, invisible, until he asked, "Any final comments?" I stood. The moment I did, heads turned with visible confusion. Some wrinkled noses, some chuckled. The man with the mic blinked. "Yes? I'd like to speak about sanitation issues on floors 3, 12, and 19. Excuse me," he interrupted, smiling thinly. "This session is for residents only." I met his gaze. "This affects residents. His tone was performative, like he couldn't possibly guess. "Maintenance staff," I replied. "Then kindly sit. You're not a stakeholder here." A few people murmured. A couple even smirked. One woman whispered, "Oh, I've seen her before. She's the one from that TikTok." I didn't move. The man's smile stiffened. "Look, this is a formal meeting. Employees don't speak. That's protocol." I scanned the room. Not a single person met my eyes. Not the woman from the trash bag. Not the man from the coffee spill. Not the girl who went viral using my labor as a joke. And in that moment, I didn't feel anger. I felt clarity. They didn't just overlook me, they erased me. and now they were trying to silence me in the one room where truth was supposed to be heard. I nodded, quietly, folded my paper, returned to the back of the room. 1 minute later, the meeting ended. Everyone stood, chattered, laughed, passed by me like I wasn't there. But they would remember this night. Not because I spoke, but because the next time I stood, they'd all be sitting. I didn't leave the room right away. While the others stretched, mingled, and checked their phones, I stood near the back, still, patient. The air was buzzing with that post-meeting self-importance people get when they think they've made decisions. I waited until most of them had gathered their things. Then I walked up front. No podium, no microphone. Just my clipboard and a calm voice. "Excuse me," I said, loud enough to carry. "I'd like 1 minute. Not to speak as staff, but as someone with legal standing." The room stilled. Some turned. Some rolled their eyes. The man with the headset scoffed. "Ma'am, we've closed the floor." I opened the clipboard and flipped to the top sheet. According to New York property records, as of 3 weeks ago, ownership of this building, Beacon Heights, LLC, was transferred to Grace Elaine Miller. Pause. Let them think. I watched the recognition bloom, and then curdle. "That's me," I said quietly. The silence that followed was exquisite, not dramatic, not gasping, just a slow, suffocating stillness. Like someone had pulled all the oxygen from the room. The woman who tossed her trash at me turned red and looked away. The man who spilled coffee stiffened, fingers twitching at his phone. The girl from TikTok? She froze mid-swipe, mouth half open. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I simply placed a manila folder on the table near the front. These are the proposed amendments to the Resident Code of Conduct. A separate meeting will be held next week with the new management board, selected by me. Attendance is expected. No one interrupted. No one dared. I continued, voice level. If you've treated staff with dignity, you have nothing to worry about. If you haven't, well, I keep records too. I let that hang, just long enough. Then I closed the folder and turned to leave. Not a single person blocked my path. Not one word was said. The security guard who once barked at me to use the service entrance stood by the door. He stepped aside, and for the first time, he nodded. Not out of courtesy, out of recognition. The memo went out at 7:01 a.m. sharp. Subject line: Policy revisions effective immediately. Attached: a full list of behavioral violations gathered over 30 days. New lease renewal criteria. A warning: any continued incidents of harassment, discrimination, or abuse of building staff will result in non-renewal of residency. No signatures, no apologies, just a line at the bottom. This building has a new standard. By 8 a.m., my inbox was full. Residents asking for clarification. Panicked tenants wondering if their past actions had been flagged. I didn't respond. At 10:15, I walked into the management office. The old property manager was already standing, red-faced, arms crossed. "You're suspending me," he snapped. "No," I said, placing a folder on the desk. "I'm placing you under administrative review for violation of Employee Code 3.7, misuse of authority, repeated intimidation, and failure to report resident misconduct." He opened his mouth to argue, but the HR representative I'd hired the day before entered behind me. I didn't need to stay. My part was done. By noon, word had spread. The woman from the trash bag. Her lease wouldn't be renewed. The man who spilled coffee? Same. The TikTok star. I'd already forwarded her post to legal, not to sue, but to notify that her digital defamation had consequences. I didn't demand apologies. Didn't call anyone out by name. Didn't shame or humiliate. I simply let the system work, with new hands on the wheel. The irony? They all still lived in the same building, walked the same halls, used the same elevators. Only now they watched what they said in them. I passed one of them, Mr. Whoops, in the lobby that evening. He nodded. No smirk this time, no wink, just a nod. and averted eyes. That night, I opened my laptop, scrolled to the video one last time. This is how peasants survive in Manhattan. The original was gone, deleted. But my copy? Backed up in 3 drives, time-stamped, watermarked. I didn't post it, didn't need to. I already had what I came for, not revenge, restoration. The building had mirrors again, this time not the shiny kind in the lobby, but the human ones. People now saw themselves, and that was enough. They started arriving 3 days after the meeting, typed, folded, left neatly at the front desk with my name on the envelope. Some were short, 2 lines of regret. Others rambled for pages, desperate to explain, to justify. I didn't know who you were. That wasn't the real me. I was having a bad day. I've never done that before, I swear. All the usual lines people reach for when consequence catches up. I read each one, carefully, quietly, alone. And then I placed them into a file folder labeled, Not Forgotten. I didn't respond, not out of spite, out of clarity. I didn't need their words, I needed their transformation. And time would tell whether those letters were true apologies, or just fear dressed as humility. The cleaning crew I'd met in those early days, they were gone long before I arrived. Some had been fired for attitude, others for lateness. But the truth was simpler. They spoke up when they weren't supposed to. They looked someone in the eye. They dared to ask for better. I found them one by one. A few were hesitant. Years of bitterness don't fade easily. One woman asked me, "Why now?" I told her the truth. Because now I can do it right. I rehired every name I could find. And this time, I didn't just offer jobs. I rewrote the job itself. Fair hours. Transparent bonus structure. Mental health days. A private break room with real chairs, not overturned buckets. The new supervisor, Maria, had once been dismissed for insubordination. Now she ran the team with the calm strength of someone who knew exactly what the job cost. They didn't call me Miss Miller. They called me Grace, and meant it. I didn't ask them to forgive the building. I just asked them to help me change it. It's strange what you stop needing when you've finally been seen. Not applause, not fear, not even justice, the way people usually define it. Just the quiet. People behave terribly when they believe no one's watching, but they behave even worse when they think they'll never be held accountable. I used to think that told me who they really were, but maybe it just told me who they were afraid to be. The building didn't make them cruel. Power didn't either. Fear did. Fear of being small, invisible, irrelevant. Fear disguised as pride. So no, I'm not angry anymore. Not because they deserve peace, but because I do. I don't need to be right in their eyes. I don't need them to remember my name. What matters is that I remember who I am, even when they tried so hard to make me forget. I could have burned the whole thing down, called every name, posted every video, watched them squirm, but I didn't, because revenge feeds the fire, and I was ready to walk out of the flames. I didn't act from fury, I acted from clarity. There's a difference. I didn't win anything, not over them, only over the part of me that wanted to scream, to make them hurt the way they hurt me. I left that part behind, because control without compassion isn't strength. It's just another form of fear in a better suit. I walk slower these days, not because I'm tired, but because I finally have nothing to chase. I smile more, at the staff, at strangers, even at the ones who once looked through me like glass. They flinch sometimes, not from guilt. From the sudden presence of someone they expected to stay small. I let it be. I keep the letters in a drawer. I keep the uniform folded in the back of my closet. Not as trophies, but as reminders that the low ground can be the most powerful place to stand, when you know how to rise from it. If there's one thing I hope stays behind after I'm gone, it's this. You don't have to shout to be heard. You don't have to punish to restore. You don't have to win to walk away free. Let them keep their pride. I'll keep my peace, and that is enough.